here. Today's video is on how to make our own homemade stock cubes. So before we begin, I thought I'd give you a little bit of the nutritional information about what's going to be available to us through making this stock. So the recipe contains bones, so I'm afraid that it's not vegan or vegetarian friendly. I'm sorry for that, guys. Using bones is a great way of sourcing calcium and phosphorus. And the marrow within the middle of the bones that's going to be drawn out in this process is really high in omega-3s and 6s. It's packed full of vitamin A and K2 and minerals such as iron, zinc, selenium and boron. The connective tissues that are sort of in and around the bone structure itself is an amazing source of glucosamine and chondroitin. Now this is great for arthritis and joint pain and features in most supplements that you'll be finding for those conditions. So within the bones is collagen. Now during the cooking process, collagen is actually converted into gelatin, which is going to give this gelatinous texture to the stock that we're making. And gelatin is actually high in glycine, and also it has a very unique profile of amino acids. So that's another benefit. I always incorporate some form of offal into our stock. Now, whether that be heart, liver, kidney, spleen, whatever it might be a mix of all of them. Offal is one of those things that I know people are put off by and not really sure how to cook, but stock's a great way to use offal. And the reason it's so important to consume offal is it's really high in B vitamins, in particular B12. It's also high in vitamins A, D, E and K. It's high in minerals such as iron, magnesium, zinc, and it also contains something called choline, which is essential for our brains. It's an essential nutrient for our brains. So if you can incorporate some offal into your stock and into your diet in general, it's really beneficial for your health. So do that. So let's get down to how we're going to make this stock. First of all, what you'll need is a large stock pot. It doesn't need to be as big as this one. It might need to be bigger. It depends on the batch that you're making. So just suit it to whatever pot that you might have. We're going to need some apple cider vinegar. Apple cider vinegar actually helps convert the collagen to gelatin, so it's a beneficial thing to add into the stock. I'm going to need a bit of salt. You don't have to add salt. That's entirely up to you. Some peppercorns, some herbs of your choice. Whatever you fancy using. I'm using lemon thyme today just because it's my favourite. Some vegetables. Now, onions and garlic, celery, carrots. I always normally use carrots for the stock, but I've actually not got any at the moment. I've got this little fly fluffing around my face. We've got no carrots in the vegetable patch. We harvested the last ones a few weeks ago. So I haven't got any carrots to put in, which is a bit of a shame, but it is what it is, so use what you've got. I haven't got any onions, but I have got shallots, so I'm using shallots, which I've just cut up roughly into little bits. Leave the skin on, there's goodness in the skin. I believe some people say that the skin does give a nice colour to the stock. I'm not too worried about the colour of my stock, but there you go. Loads of garlic, love a bit of garlic. Again, leave the skin on, just cut the bigger cloves into bits or slightly crush them. Some offal. Today I'm using heart. I don't have any other offal available at the moment, so that's what we're using. And some bones. I'm using lamb today. You can go to your butcher and ask for organic grass-fed lamb bones, beef bones, free-range pork, free-range chicken, anything works. So just ask them what they've got, and get what you can. So I've got a mix of neck, bits of leg, pieces of spine. It's just a melange of cuts in there. And I'm also using my leftover dinner carcasses from the last couple of nights. So that was a lamb leg that we didn't quite finish the meat on, but there's not enough there for another dinner, so I'll cook that in there, and a duck carcass. So you can use cooked, if you've done a roast chicken or whatever like that, you can add that in too. So it's really simple. What we're going to do is we're going to chuck everything in to our nice big stock pot. So we're going to add the bones in there. A bit of offal. I'll mix it up a bit. Some of the herbs and the shallots. Chuck that in there. Get you in there. More of that. Rest of the offal. Just going to wash my hands. So we'll get the rest of that in there as well. So I'm going to add whole peppercorns. A sprinkle of those in there. I'm going to add a couple of teaspoons of salt. It's quite a big pot I've got in here, so 2 teaspoons of salt and a good splash of organic cider vinegar, preferably with the mother. Put those nutrients in there. So roughly 2 tablespoons. Again, just adjust to the size of the batch that you're making. So that is what's involved in prepping the stock. So now what we're going to do is we're going to fill so my bones are coming to about here, so I'm going to fill this with water to a couple of inches above the bones, and I'm going to put the lid on. Then I'm going to stick it on the fire. We've got a fire that we can sit the pot on top of, but obviously if you don't have a fire, stick it on the hob, obviously, or get the barbecue going outside and get that lit with some wood if your pot's too big for your hob. So I'm going to let that all simmer away for maybe 6 to 8 hours, so let it really cook down. If you notice that the water level has dropped considerably and the bones at the top aren't getting the water, you can top up a little bit, but I wouldn't worry too much. Just leave the lid on and it should be fine. So once that's done, fish the bones out. Sorry. Fish the bones out and strain the liquid through a fine sieve. And then you'll be left with all of the meat that's fallen off the bones, and then you can use that in your cooking, whether you're making a pie or whatever you might make with that meat. It's perfectly edible, so you can use that. With the strained liquid that remains, that is now stock, so you could use that as it is. But what I'm then going to do is I'm going to put the pot back on the fire, back on the heat, and I'm going to turn the heat up, so I'm going to get that fire roaring, and I'm going to take the lid off. Then I'm going to let that boil away and get rid of some of that water content within the pot. Now, for a pot this size, I'll probably let it get down to about there, but I'll just keep tasting as I go. What you're after is a really strong tasting solution. Okay, so you really want that. You're basically creating a concentrated stock, if you like. Once you've done that and it's quite strong, what I do then is I pour it into baking trays, that, you know, the sort of ones with slightly higher sides, because you want it sort of this thick, maybe an inch or two thick. So pour that liquid into trays or dishes and let it cool. Once it's cool, it will have sort of almost solidified and create quite a hard jelly type consistency. Now, quite often what you'll find, there'll be sort of a white layer across a thin layer across the top, and that's just the fats that have slightly separated. So once you've got that tray and it's cooled and it's hardened up a bit, all I do is cut that into little squares, stick it in big bags and pop it in the freezer. And that is your stock cubes. So I'll show you some of mine that I've made from before. So I just make bags. If they've slightly stuck together, just give them a sort of tap around on a surface and they'll break up pretty quickly. So this is what you get left with. As you can see, that's that. I don't know whether you can see it or not, but that's the sort of slight thin layer at the top there that you can see. So that is a stock cube. Now, that's quite a large one. You can make them a lot smaller. It just depends what you're doing. And then chuck that in a dish. And you'll want to water it down a bit so that it's not super strong. And it depends on how strong you like it or how strong you've made it as to how big your stock cubes and how much liquid you're going to add to it as well. And it's really that simple. I'll pop those back in the freezer before I forget.